We're so happy to have SwingLeft in the room. Matt, thank you for being here. Caffrey, SwingLeft, glad to see you. And also Jennifer Hutz, all the way from Brooklyn, bringing it from Brooklyn. Thank you. And you are the Virginia person, so everybody memorize her face. We're going to be seeing a lot of Jennifer, as we say. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad to see some friends. Nancy, thank you for joining. And also Stephen Kaplan, always great to see your face. And all of you I can't see, thank you for being here. And I'm going to pitch it over. Oh, hey girl, I see you. Jocelia, how are you? Good to see you. Well,
hey everybody. Sorry, I was just turning on my video.
Good. Well, I'm so glad you're here because you really are, you're a great relational organizer. So thank you for being here. And it's
thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, super. All right, Matt, it is all yours. Thank you guys. And I'll mute myself.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for having me and Jennifer. We're really excited to be with you and to talk about relational organizing. And Catherine, I really appreciate the introduction. You know, to say someone is a great relational organizer is to just say that they're a great organizer. The funny thing about relational organizing, it's kind of a hip new thing in organizing these days, but all organizing is relational. I've always been sort of confused and frustrated by this distinction. Often what we're talking about is giving people new tools and new training to help them just be good organizers and good recruiters and good relationship builders. So anyway, really excited to talk to you all about relational organizing and sort of using it particularly for volunteer recruitment will be more of our focus this evening. We'll talk about voter contact as well, but we'll spend a little bit more time talking about volunteer recruitment. So my name is Matt Caffrey. I'm SwingLeft's Senior Director of Grassroots Community Organizing. So it's my responsibility to build the program that supports grassroots organizations and groups across the country that we work with. So everything from, 31st Street SwingLeft in DC to the Arlington Democrats in Arlington to Peninsula Indivisible down in the, I guess, Yorktown area. So we work with groups of different names and of different types all across the country who want to do work to help us, win races in key battlegrounds for Democrats. We'll talk about that more in just a moment. So you all know all this, but encourage you to stay on mute until you're ready to speak, but make liberal use of the chat. We would love to hear from you. As I said, because relational organizing is just organizing, you all have all sorts of incredible experience to bring to the table, and I want you to kind of share, ask questions. There's an intimate enough group tonight. We can dialogue. So we've got some content we want to get through, but definitely want to engage with you all, and we have plenty of time. And here's our agenda tonight. We'll jump around a little bit, but we'll start with just a quick introduction about who SwingLeft is and what we do. Then we'll talk about kind of the basics of relational organizing, hosting relational organizing events, the tool Reach that we'll be using. So we'll cover all of this evening. So then I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer Hutz, who is the regional organizing coordinator for SwingLeft, covering the southeast part of the U.S. So she is our point person for Virginia, and I'll let her kind of talk us through some of SwingLeft and our strategy.
Thank you, Matt. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And yes, if I don't know you yet, if you have any questions about anything with Virginia and SwingLeft and anything, please reach out to me because I am in charge of everything from Virginia down. So anyway, but I just wanted to tell you, so here's a little bit about SwingLeft if you've never heard of us. This is a fancy way of saying that SwingLeft pretty much, we find the most effective methods in the most effective races to win, to make the biggest change in the country. So we are really good at respecting our volunteers' time and trying to find the best things for them to do the way that makes the biggest difference. So we also encourage everyone to work year-round, which is why we have groups from all over the country working to help Virginia in this election right now, which is amazing. We're also starting a new initiative, which is don't just vote, volunteer, and trying to get people to realize to step up. We know electing Democrats will strengthen our democracy, and that, you know, winning isn't everything, but it is a start. So that's just a little bit about SwingLeft. And then here's just some stats about our last 3 years. We also encourage lots of early donations. We know that early money really makes a huge difference. We team up with Vote Forward, writing letters to voters, which hopefully most of you are aware of, but if you're not, we have lots of letters to voters in Virginia that still need to be adopted for our mailing date, which I think is September 18th. We have people calling from all over the country into Virginia to help out. And then we're so excited to finally be able to knock doors again. So we will keep adding that number. And then just some quick through, you know, we all know this, we're all here on this call because we know how important democracy is and what we need to do. We want to go through. So SwingLeft has also started a 10-year strategy plan, and it starts with Virginia and keeping your trifecta. And then we're going to defend the House and the Senate. And then after that, we're focusing on winning state races, and we are opening up to gubernatorial races down the line. So here's our political priorities, which I just said: protect the trifecta, hold the Senate, and then finally, we cannot let 2022 be another 2010, encouraging volunteers to really not sit tight just because we have Biden in the White House. We have to keep winning because it is just too scary not to. And then here's just, we'll quickly go through so you can just see what our targets will be in 2020, which are pretty exciting to think we could have all these houses and all these governor's races. So anyway, after we defend and keep Virginia blue, these will be the next goals. So, and here we are, back to winning starts in Virginia. So thank you guys so much. And I'm going to pass it back to Matt to start the presentation.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And as just to anticipate a likely question, we will be sharing the slides so you all can go back to all of those slides. We just flip through very quickly, some if you'd like. You know, we know that there's a lot in here, but we want to spare a lot of time for our relational organizing training. So just to dive in, what is relational organizing? Well, I already teased this. All organizing is about relationships. In traditional organizing, often what we're trying to do is build new and often brief relationships to promote your issue or campaign. So you're at a door, it's a perfect stranger on the other side of the door, you knock on the door, and you try within the few seconds you have of their attention to build a relationship with them that can be leveraged to support your candidate or your cause. With relational organizing, what instead we're doing is leveraging a supporter's existing relationships to promote the issue or campaign. So it's just sort of transitioning from brief, specific relationships to try to adjust for your issue and instead focusing on existing relationships. And that is really important for a couple of reasons. So we all know that people are tired of phone calls, in particular, texts. You know, you get those people who are cranky at the door even. I think the door is it's like the last place people get cranky. But you know, by election day, some people are tired of having their door knocked on even. And, you know, part of that is like, you're a stranger. But if you call that same person and you have a personal relationship with them, they're far more likely to open your email or your text or take your call or talk to you at the door or whatever it might be, right? Because you have that existing relationship, you have better reach with that person than any other campaign volunteer might with that same person. And of course, because you're leveraging an existing relationship, there's a good chance that you are more able to move that voter than a random person might be. Now, we all know this isn't always the case, right? Like you might have that family member you just have sort of an adversarial relationship with, you know, if you think Y, they're automatically going to want to think X, and that's fine. But by and large, the people within our networks, the kind of friendly acquaintances, friends, church mates, coworkers, classmates, those people, you are going to have better effectiveness, better reach with those folks. And that's why relational is so important. So, we know that we're up against some big challenges over the next few years. We know that it would not be a historical anomaly for Democrats to win in 22, but it would be close. There has been one other midterm in modern American political history in which the party that held the presidency sort of won the midterms. It's happened precisely once. And so, it's going to take all of us working together to make this happen. This tends to happen across all of American history. It tends to happen during great upheaval, during major global national events. Okay, we've got several of those. So it is possible. We just have to organize. So, and these races, especially the races that determine which party controls power, they tend to be decided by the tiniest of margins. Think about Nancy Guy, who won in 2019 by 41 votes, if I'm remembering correctly. Somebody's going to correct me if that's off. But it's these races that determine who controls the legislature, to determine who controls Congress, even the Senate. These races come down to tiny, tiny margins. So talking to people in your network can increase turnout. It's also a super effective volunteer recruitment tool, and so it's really important. The other thing is traditional targeting, traditional organizing misses a lot of people, especially young people. They're just like missing from the voter files, and we can't always find them. And so that's another way in which relational organizing can be a really powerful way of finding people who are likely Democratic voters, but they're invisible to the campaign for whatever reason, and collecting data on those people and giving it back to the campaign can be incredibly effective, right? If you find out your friend Susan, who's not even in the voter file, actually is a leaning, likely supporter, and she cares a lot about healthcare, that is really powerful information to a campaign who can then make sure that message reaches that person through you or through other channels as well. So that's all why relational organizing is really, really important. And just a quick note, I'm borrowing from a former congressional candidate we've worked with some to promote relational organizing here. And this is his slide, so apologies, it's not the way I would normally build a slide, but just wanted to share it because I think it very eloquently kind of compares what it's like to be a normal campaign volunteer, where you're doing the sort of reaching out to strangers, to lots of them, sort of in a not entirely random, but fairly random way, versus talking to someone people might be overwhelmed. You're the best person. Like, you're the only person that, in some cases, that can turn this person out. Friend banking them is a gift, because if you get them all the information and you get them to the end of the process, they're not going to get all of those random calls and texts. And you probably, as we were talking about before, these relationships we build while phone banking or canvassing tend to be very brief. You may never speak to that person again. So anyway, it's a very different relationship when you're doing relational organizing. So actually, let's use the Georgia runoff as a case study, for a moment. So in 2021, at the beginning of this year, we were facing two Senate races that I think it's fair to say just about no one thought Democrats could win. I think that's probably safe to say. Honestly, I didn't think we were going to win. I was terrified. And SwingLeft did a lot of work on those races. Biden had just won by less than 12,000 votes. Purdue had been the top vote getter on election day in November. Warnock had edged Loeffler, but not by a ton. There were 2 months and 2,600 precincts. So you can see it was a really big challenge. So this congressional candidate who we worked with on relational organizing, he's actually from Texas, but he had just lost a competitive targeted House race in 2020. He also ran and lost in 2018. He had built this incredible campaign outside of Houston in the most diverse congressional district in the country. He had been campaigning in like 40 languages using relational organizing and doing all these cool things. He lost, must have been devastating. And instead of just like being in the pits, he just like picked up and moved to Georgia to help Ossoff run his relational organizing program. Pretty incredible. And they built a network of 161,000. And they believe that being as a part of that network was a 3.8% increase in those 161,000 people's likelihood to vote, which, if you know, that's like a crazy huge impact. That's, way more than what we'd expect to see if we had knocked on each of their doors, for example. They had organizers in almost every county. You can see this map is a heat map of where they had volunteers. So pockets of volunteers all across the country. And their network was the kind of people that we want to be identifying, right? Like Black, young, female. Lots of these people would have been missing in traditional campaign settings. Lots of low propensity voters, including 25,000 people in their network who hadn't even voted in November, in the November election, which is just nuts. And they just used incredible tools and staff to build this program, including a paid element, which I think is really cool and innovative, but not particularly applicable here. Just a couple more slides about their data. They found low propensity voters who had lots of low propensity voters in their networks, which isn't surprising. You can see the higher propensity the canvasser, the more likely that their network was also high propensity, meaning like everyone in their network votes already. And so what was incredible about this, all of us are up here, right? Like that's just who we are. You wouldn't be on this call if you weren't like a super high propensity voter. You vote every time. That's how most of us are. And that makes us different. We'll talk about that in a minute. These people, though, the lower turnout scores, their networks are really valuable to the campaign because they know the kinds of people we all want to turn out to vote. And so they have those relationships that can be used, which is pretty cool. The other thing is the young people, they know young people. Isn't that shocking? I mean, it's not actually surprising, but hey, like engaging young people in this work means that we're tapping into voters that we so often miss. So, we can see this was really effective at recruiting diverse audiences and diversifying the electorate, which is pretty neat. And just one last slide from them. You can see this on the y-axis is age, on the x-axis is likelihood to turn out. You can see, and then the color is how big an impact this relational organizing program had on those voters in terms of encouraging them to turn out. You can see it was increasingly effective as you went down the age scale and down the voter propensity scale, meaning young, low propensity voters were the most impacted by this work. And again, those were absolutely key to winning the runoffs, the very improbable win in the runoffs that we did achieve. So just want to say, this is a proof of concept. I think we'll see, I'm hopeful that we will see programs like this for all of time moving forward because it was so successful and so meaningful. So anyway, relational organizing, it actually is sort of like a return to old school politics where it's really all about relationships and connecting with people, communicating and coordinating continuously, trying to battle and democratic drop-off. Because again, we can have real conversations with people and educate them about why they need to vote down the ballot. It allows us to potentially do better than the polls suggest because we're changing, the polls are all using likely voter models. And then, if we're turning out people who no one thinks is likely to vote, then we can, overcome some polling sometimes. Helps us combat disinformation. Again, we're a trusted source. And, helps us eventually, hopefully, restore democracy, in this country. So, that was cute. He does not like that he doesn't get to hang out. All right. So.
Hey, Matt, is that your baby? Whose baby is that?
Sorry, hold on. My audio disconnected.
It's okay. I can hear you. No, I just was wondering who has the baby.
Oh, that's my wife, Tasha. She's got
Okay. Thank you. That was sweet. I just was
she'll
wondering.
hang out with him. Yeah. All right. So we'll talk much more about Reach in a moment. Reach is the tool that we use for relational organizing. It's also the tool that the Georgia runoff team used for their relational organizing. It was actually initially developed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaign, basically because canvassing didn't work in New York City. You can't just walk up to somebody's door and knock on it. There's like, it's an apartment building and you can't get in and you get kicked out and all sorts of things. So they wanted to flip it and say, instead of you going to someone's door, let people come to you, and then you can just search the voter file, find their profile, and then enter the data there as if you're at their door. So that is basically the fundamentals of what Reach is. We'll look at it again in a minute, but it's a really powerful tool for what we call like high traffic canvassing, when you're face to face with a voter, or relational organizing, which is what we'll talk about for the tool tonight. And actually, we will be inviting each of you to use the tool and to have access through us if you'd like it. So it doesn't hurt my feelings if you want to like go on your phone and download the app now. So you'll be ready to do that at the end of the call. All right. So let's actually get into the message that we want to use when we're talking to these voters and volunteers. So the first thing about the message is really, who's the audience? So, in this hypothetical, we want to prioritize people in our community or who live near a competitive race, who have some time on their hands, and who we think would tell us yes if we ask them to take action around the election. So all of you probably know these folks who aren't yet involved, who care about the issues, who maybe, are otherwise like engaged in responsible citizens, but they're not volunteering on the elections yet. Like, that's, in this hypothetical, who we might want to reach out to. So again, this whole in your community or close to a competitive race, near a competitive race, they can either volunteer directly with Nancy Guy's campaign if they live in Virginia Beach, or honestly, if they live in Anchorage, Alaska, they can write letters to Virginia voters and encourage them to vote. So it really, just build relationships with people who you think will volunteer, and all the better if they want to get involved with the group you're a part of or the actions that you're engaged with. That makes it even more effective. And of course, sometimes you'll be wanting to talk to voters. Well, it's like, well, do they live in a super competitive district? That's who you'd want to prioritize. And again, do you think that they've got good values, but maybe they're not great voters? Like, do you have that impression that coworker, it's like a really good person, but probably hasn't voted in a while? Like, that would be a great relational organizing target on the voter side. We'll talk about both tonight, but primarily volunteer recruitment. So in your message, there's a reason that you are the more effective messenger, right? And it's because of your relationship. So make the message personal. Why are you passionate about this work? How does this race connect to what you care about or what you do? Make a case statement. So this is particularly true for volunteer recruitment, but I think it's also true for voter turnout. Talk about why you're doing what you're doing and why you think it'll move the needle or why you think it would make a difference. These are specific somewhat to SwingLeft, but talk about our strategy or how this work will help build a Democratic majority in order to do the things that we all care about. So yeah, that's next. Then, with volunteers, encourage them to join your group. I already mentioned that. Invite them to participate in something you're doing. I think it's just a much better ask if you're saying, I'm going to be joining this letter writing party on Sunday. Do you want to join? We can go together. We can get a glass of wine, whatever. And of course, you can also ask them to do things on their own. I think it's probably a better case if you're asking them to do it with them. Same goes with with voters. You can say like, hey, Miss Susan, I'd love to go vote together. Polls are going to be open on Saturday. Want to go? And I think the other thing, we have a little vote tripling pitch in here. Vote tripling is again a really well-established, proven relational organizing tactic that basically says if you encourage people to remind 3 friends to vote, and then you remind them to do that, that it really increases turnout, not only of the 3 friends, but actually of the voter themselves. It makes them more likely to vote. I'll come back to that in a second. But so that's another ask we can make of a voter. And hey, if they seem really enthusiastic, even when you're talking to a voter, if the reason you're engaging that voter is voter turnout, if they seem really engaged, I always believe that we should ask them to volunteer as well. It's like SwingLeft used to have a tagline, "It's not enough to vote this year, volunteer." It's like, I think we should always be recruiting. That's kind of my attitude. But forgive me, I mentioned before, you all already have a lot of the skills you need to be successful in this work, and that good relational organizing is just good organizing. There's this old trick that we were always taught, like I worked for the Obama campaign. You wanted to increase somebody's likelihood to show up for the canvas or the phone bank or whatever it was, ask them to bring something. It was always taught to us, like bring a case of water or a couple clipboards or whatever. And this is the same principle. If you're saying, hey, will you remind 3 friends to go vote? It makes the person more likely to actually go do it. So anyway, next. So when? This first divider or whatever, this first headline here is like true in all of organizing and all of campaigning. And it's something to really kind of internalize and think about when you're trying to be strategic about your volunteer engagement. Results dissipate over time. Let's say you have an incredibly persuasive conversation with a voter. You just knock it out of the park. You really connect with them. You really move them. They started off as like undecided, and they walk away and they're like, yes, I'm absolutely voting for Terry McAuliffe. If you have that conversation in July, we can't track. Pollsters cannot see any impact from that conversation by election day. That's just unfortunately the reality, right? Like results dissipate. And it doesn't mean it's not worth having that conversation. The data we're gathering is really important. It's good practice. And who knows, maybe it doesn't show up in the polling, but it still has an impact, right? We don't actually know. But what that means is that we really want to make asks that happen near the time where they can actually take action. And it means we want to front load asks that are about status change, permanent status change. So signing up to vote by mail, it's a great ask early on in a campaign. Pledging to volunteer in this case, during the last weekends, which is a brand we have for basically rebranding GOTV. But, registering to vote, status change, those are great things to do early on in a campaign and early on in a relationship you might be building with a contact. And I think for exactly the same reason, that means that with volunteers, like having them join your local group, if you're part of a local group, is a really great way to engage them. Having them come to a training or a planning meeting, having them come to an event that they can do soon, that's all really helpful. Again, this is just traditional organizing, but like the more specific your ask, the more effective it is, the more likely you are to get a yes. So those are all really, really important. And then again, as election day gets closer, use that urgency and focus your asks on the immediate volunteer opportunities that are high impact. All right. So next, we're going to talk about hosting a friend bank. So you could say, okay, well, Reach is an app and people are reaching out to their own contacts. Couldn't they just do this anytime they want to? Well, here's why we think it's really important to host friend banks, not just give people a relational organizing tool and tell them to go do it, but to actually engage them in events where you're doing this as a group. First, community. Community is important in organizing. Volunteers might be feeling a little hesitant about engaging their networks, and having supportive peers come together and do it collectively as a group can be really, really helpful. I know even for me, I've been organizing for well over a decade at this point, and it is always a little different when you're reaching out to your own contacts. And so again, I think having that supportive environment where it's something you're doing collectively as a group is really important. Second, having these events happen regularly means that people are actually going to show up and do it more. We find this over and over again that, people can do a virtual phone bank from home, but actually if you have a weekly phone bank, they're more likely to do a phone banking shift each week, right? Q's back. Do you want to say hi? My wife is even trying to tempt him with ice cream, but he wants to be with y'all. He is really excited about relational organizing. So anyway, regularity is really, really important. And, I tell our volunteer leaders across the country this all the time. If you are doing anything, you should be doing it regularly. Monthly, weekly is even better. Yes, absolutely, Jen. And so then the last reason is really like support. Like, this is still organizing. This is hard. And there are questions and the Reach app, it's a great app, but it has a learning curve like anything does. So, it's good to have, training and support that is right at hand while folks are doing this work. So a couple of tips for a successful relational organizing party. Ask folks to download the app beforehand, as I kind of sort of did a moment ago when I encouraged you all to download the app. Include a really thorough training and make sure everybody's feeling really comfortable. Again, relational organizing is intimidating enough without feeling intimidated by the technology. Build time into the event for volunteers to actually do the outreach. You want to make sure that the conversations are happening. It's one thing to have a training, but to have the actual voter outreach or volunteer outreach happen during the meeting is really important. And then make it fun. Our college team had a bingo board for folks contacted. So like if you contacted a coworker, you got to put a bingo thing down. And they did different things. We've had theme nights, we've had crazy hats. I mean, we've done music. I think there's a lot of things. And because relational organizing actually tends to be through messaging apps like text, email, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, or whatever, it's actually a great thing to do with entertainment. You can have a documentary or a movie or music, and folks can be doing their relational organizing at the same time. So, and then after your event, after your friend bank, you personally, if you've done any reaching, any relational organizing, you should keep checking on Reach and make it part of your routine, just like other apps are. That means like if somebody texts you back later and gives you an answer to one of your questions, go back into the app and record that answer and encourage your participants to do the same thing. And then, just use the list in the app. I'll show it to you in a moment to just check in with folks. And it's not just if they reply, but proactively reach back out. Like when the voter registration deadline is coming up, if they haven't told you they've registered to vote yet, follow back up and remind them before the deadline, that kind of thing. And then, again, remind the people who participated to do all of that same thing to keep those conversations and outreach going. Okay, so now we have reached the point of this call where we're actually going to talk about the app Reach. So you won't actually be able to follow along on your device just yet because I want to show you some of these slides and kind of give you a sense of what you are going to be looking for. But again, you'll be able to watch this later or look at the slides later because we'll share them with you so you can kind of go back in and use the app as you're hearing the training. But we want to be able to kind of like really show it to you collectively as a group first. So first, this left screenshot is what you'll be met with when you open the app for the first time once you've signed up. You do have to create an account and it'll take a moment. You have to enter a code to get access to the data, which we'll provide you here tonight. But so anyway, once you've gotten through the app setup process, you'll see something that looks just like this. And, we can like add stuff to this front page if we have like calls to action, but it won't always be there. You'll see there's a toolbar at the bottom that has a number of different functions within the app. Your information will be in the top right corner, and then there'll be an option to change campaigns if you're part of multiple Reach campaigns in the top left. So, but the primary panel that we're going to really talk about here is actually the second part of the toolbar at the bottom. It's the search function. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but this is what it looks like. There's a place to put the name of the voter you're looking for and their location, which doesn't have to be specific. It can be general, but we'll talk about that more in a moment. So relational organizing with Reach. You'll use Reach to search for contacts within the voter file. So Reach basically, again, is giving you access to every single person in the voter file across the whole country. Different campaigns can give you slices of that data. The SwingLeft reach is literally every registered voter in the whole country. And it gives you the ability to have an organizing conversation with that voter via whatever process you want. It's a bring your own contact. I should clarify. It gives you access to every person in the voter file, but without any contact information. So this is a bring your own contact information tool. So you have their phone number or their Facebook Messenger or whatever, and you're reaching out. I should note here, it is possible to import your contacts from your phone book to the Reach app and then match those contacts to the voter file. That is possible, but it's actually outside of the scope of tonight's conversation because it's a little tricky. And so we're just going to leave that aside. If you're interested, reach out to Jennifer or me, and we can try to set up a separate training to support that. We actually don't necessarily think it's the best way of doing relational organizing through Reach. So that's part of the reason we're not covering it tonight. So conversations are guided by a script, and there are survey questions. So basically like the same kind of questions you would answer during a Canvas conversation, a Canvas interaction. So you track all of that within the app, and it allows you to add important information, like whether or not they're interested in volunteering, and if so, what their phone number and email is, as an example. So, and again, you know, the script we have in the tool is really what issues motivate them. Are they interested in volunteering? Would they like to attend an event? That's optional if you're recruiting for an event. We're not, if you don't have an event in mind and you check yes, it's not like somebody's going to reach out to them and say like, so you want to come to an event? Let me find you one. It's just like if you are specifically using this tool to recruit for an event, you can record what they say about that event with that tool, with that question. Same thing with join a local group. You know, it's up to you to help get that person plugged into the group, but you can record whether or not they were interested with that question. If they're a student, we can record which school they attend, and then of course their contact information. So how does this actually work in the actual process? So from the search tool, you'd enter some basic information, and you'd identify the voter you're looking for. I did me because I don't want to share personally identifiable information with all of you in a public setting like this. So that's mine. When you don't list District of Columbia, there's like 30 Matt Caffreys, and you have to kind of scroll through and find the right one. But it is very doable. And you notice I just said District of Columbia. I could have put a zip code here. I could have put a city name. This location search field is super flexible. And of course, I put Matt Caffrey, but my voter registration, my official name is Matthew B. Caffrey III, right? So it's a pretty flexible search field on the name as well. It doesn't have to be exact, and it's pretty good about finding likely matches. So here's what I recommend for actually making this successful though. I recommend using your phone in one hand with this Reach search open, and then having a second screen of some type open with like Facebook or your contacts book or your email or wherever you might find and sort through your personal contacts, because you know it is, I think, much easier to have sort of a second app where you're sorting through who you want to be in contact with. And Catherine, these screenshots are actually of the app. So these are the app right here. Oh, but if you wanted to see, let me actually see if I can go back.
I was trying to download the Reach app, and I think I don't know if I downloaded the right. Yeah, there it is. So then I just SwingLeft. It says to me I have to join a campaign. I got the code. Yeah.
I'll get to that in just a moment. So
I'm
wait
sure
there.
There's other people like me in there.
All right.
Raise your hand.
I'll go ahead and sneak forward to show it to you. This is the code here, 3M9TRB. This will expire like tomorrow, I think. So like use it quickly. Write it down if you need to. We'll come back to it, so it'll be up on the screen again in just a moment. But that is the code. So going back to, hold on. Does everybody see where we were, how to search for a contact? Hope so. All right. So that is what that looks like. And now on the rightmost screen, you're actually seeing my profile page. And if we click this little arrow next to details, it would put what congressional district I live in and what my address is and all of what school district I'm in and all that kind of stuff. So, and then if you scroll down, you start to get into the actual script. It's under recruitment 2021 in this case. So you can see I've entered that I am motivated by climate change and environmental justice, that I am a yes on volunteering, that I will yes attend an event, and that yes I will join a local group. So I put all that information about myself. You can see that's kind of how it works to enter the data. So you can also, of course, use a pre-written script to help you with all of this. But, again, think about who you're contacting and how you should start the conversation. Make the script your own. If your goals are to talk about voting, start the conversation by asking about a person's registration status and candidate support. If you're talking to a person about volunteering, maybe start by talking about, maybe just go straight into your volunteer ask, or what issues they're passionate about or whatever. You can use our pre-written contact scripts that I'll show you how to access in just a moment, via any text or messaging apps, or of course you can call them or FaceTime them or Zoom them or Slack or whatever. Again, the powerful thing about Reach is it's really just a way to track the conversation, but you're bringing the contact information so you can contact them however you contact them. If you've got somebody that you only talk to on an obscure social media platform, great, do that. And I'll show you, it's pretty flexible. The tool is built well to allow you to do that. All right, so speaking of, here's how you do that. This red arrow is not part of the interface, but at the top of each person's profile page, there's these buttons: message, email, call. Invite user is basically make them a Reach volunteer so that they have access to Reach as well, and then more. So if you click this message button, you'll get something that looks like this pop up, and it's all of the various scripts. And then there's a preview of them below that, and then you have a big blue button that says use this script, or you can just start with an empty message, and that is an option as well. So that takes you into a share sheet. So depending on your platform, the iOS share sheet or the Android share sheet or whatever, but that allows you to then pick which app you want to open that sample script in to then send it to another person. So you could, again, from there, select any messaging app you have on your device, and that's pretty cool. So what does this actually look like when you're having the conversation? Well, apologies that this is not our current script. This is from the Georgia runoff election, but you can see this is me texting a friend, asking them if we can count on them to vote for Warnock. And that person says definitely, so I would click yes. And then, do you plan to vote, in person, by mail? And they say, I'll vote by mail. Okay, have you requested your absentee ballot? Oh, not yet, I can record that. And then, great, here's how you do that. And then, oh, great, I just did it. So we record that. So you can see that is how this works. You're having the conversation, natural language, however you would normally talk to this person, and then you're recording it within the app. So a couple of reminders. Actually, let me go back a few pages to show you this. So after you, I think it's actually maybe two slides before this. Here, on this page, you see the toolbar. So far, we've talked about what's on home and what's on search. Ratings and chat, you don't really need to worry about. But My Reach is important. Anyone you've ever connected with on Reach, anyone you've added or had conversations with will show up there. So what we were just discussing is you can go back to My Network to see your contacts, folks that you've searched for, had interactions with, and then you can have follow-up conversations with them from there, which saves you a little bit of time. It is really important that if you're having conversations with people, you enter contact information with them so that somebody can follow up with them, right? You can always follow up with them, and if they haven't consented to being contacted by somebody else, then fine, leave it out. But generally speaking, you're collecting valuable information that campaign can really use. So making sure you have a good phone number for them is an important part of that. Only fill out the survey questions for responses the person actually gives you. So just like with other kinds of canvassing or phone banking or whatever, it's not good to guess or pre-fill based on your assumptions. Just, we don't want to make assumptions. And again, even more important than when canvassing or phone banking, like, let's not be a robot. You got to be yourself. These are people who know you. They can tell if you're not being your authentic, genuine self. So really do make the script your own and kind of, go through the questions. Like, if you can get the answers to each of the questions, that's great, but you don't have to do it in the order or the prescribed thing. Like, we provide you scripts to help make it easier, not necessarily to kind of put you in a straitjacket. So you can actually now use Reach. You've gotten all of that training. Here again is this code. It will expire, but don't worry. We can get you access to a code if you're interested so that you can have other people join as well. But feel free to, again, write this down. It'll be in the follow-up as well. And I want to just talk about some of the resources that are available to us. So through SwingLeft. So like I said, we can get you access to a Reach access code. It can be specific to your group or to your circle of friends or whatever. You can post friend banks on Mobilize through us if you'd like. You can get access to sample slides for training, similar to what you saw tonight. We have a whole host guide written out for this as well. And then you met her before. Jennifer Hutz is our regional organizing coordinator for the Southeast. Here's her email address. Sorry, Jennifer, didn't ask you first. But she is here to support you and other grassroots volunteers and groups in the Southeast who want to have an impact on these critical races. So that's it. What questions do folks have? So Joanne, yes, the codes do expire, but we can make one specific to a given group that goes through election day. That's no problem. They expire for safety reasons, et cetera. But yes, but you don't necessarily need one. You only need a code once to get access to the app. Once you have access to the app, you can use it as many times as you want. But if you wanted to give a new person access to the app, you would need a new code if your old code has expired. But as I said, we can get you a code that won't expire too quickly. And actually, real quick, I know somebody said there are multiple apps that are called Reach. This is the logo again. And I think it's something like Reach Progressive Outreach or Progressive something. The word progressive is in like the subtitle. So it should be pretty easy to find. Got it. Progressive organizing. That's what it is. Yep.
So thank you tonight. It's been great having everybody in the room. All right. Bye, everybody. Good night. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Jennifer.